Well, thank you again, both of you, for being here. It's Juneteenth, and this is a conversation, and there's lots and lots to cover on that. Before we get started, I just want to say I just came from an event in person that was really, it was wonderful. It was at a Methodist church, and it was a mixed crowd, and there was lots of support to end racism, lots of support for criminal justice reform. And I got all the energy to do this, to have this conversation and do this meeting. And I would really like to, as we just start the conversation, like to get your thoughts on all the updates on Juneteenth. It's become a federally recognized holiday, and that came with some criticism. And I just would love to hear y'all perspectives on that, because it did come with some baggage.
Yeah.
Are you asking? Go ahead, Furonda.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just it's hard to know how to feel, to be honest. There were so many, and I've seen some really appropriate memes. They sum up our lives, don't they? That we had asked for so many things. We'd asked for for voting rights and reparations, to stop police violence, to stop these bad bills that prevent us from talking about systemic racism in schools. And what we got was the Juneteenth holiday that we were going to celebrate anyway. So it's hard to know how to feel. It feels like an acknowledgement. It also feels like gaslighting. It also feels like attempted placation. So it's a mixed emotion around the federal holiday, which is long overdue. It is, but there are other things that are long overdue as well. And if our Congress can act this swiftly, why haven't they acted on issues that are causing life and they're causing life and death in our communities each day, causing death in our communities each day.
That's very few things, pieces of legislation that cause life. And Charles, I definitely want to hear your thoughts, but I'm so excited and I'm so familiar with you guys. I forgot to do the most obvious thing, which is introduce you guys. I've been hyping this thing. I've been like, oh, you're gonna get to talk to these great speakers. This is Furonda Brasfield, and she's been working nationally on death penalty and criminal justice work. And this is also Charles Keith, who is an advocate against the death penalty, who has fought very long and hard for his brother, Kevin Keith. And so I want them to introduce themselves, but I do want to get to the conversation as well. So Charles, did you have thoughts on Juneteenth and the current setup of it?
Yes, I've celebrated Juneteenth ever since I found out about it. So it's been years. It's nothing new to me. It may be something new to the rest of the nation. I'm glad it's being recognized. I think we've made a lot of strides, but there's so many battles out there for us. I found out that I could not fight them all. So there's all kinds of warriors out there fighting all these different battles, but it's all going to meet at the tip of the spear. Myself, there were some great things that I had to learn from America. I always, you hear people call themselves African American. And I thought about that for a long time. And I said, if that is who I am and I embrace Africa, then I must also embrace America. And if that's who I am. And so there's things that we are changing. There's things that we're going to have to tolerate. You can measure how far we've come from our past, but again, we're aware of things. We have the opportunities to fight. We have legislators. We have people in all types of places. We're educated. So I think this is our opportunity to provide the future for our upcoming children.
Yeah, and so I was telling Furonda a little bit before we actually went live, just that I think it's a good moment to acknowledge what Juneteenth represents. They were setting slavery aside. The people that had been freed on Juneteenth had been enslaved illegally. And so that's the acknowledgement that we can talk about. Like, it was always wrong, but this was now at this point, this was illegal. So Juneteenth, you have to acknowledge the insidious nature that this country is built on, and we need to talk about it. And so that, to me, leads right into critical race theory and not being able to talk about that in school and not having that be politically correct for whatever reason. And it leads, and then that leads into a failed system that leads into another failed system that leads people into the criminal justice system that leads them to the death penalty. And that's why I feel like Juneteenth was a perfect day to have a conversation on this platform.
Yes.
I don't know if you guys have particular thoughts, and I've talked to both of you individually. I really want this to be a free-flowing conversation. I don't have formal questions because we all are kind of in like mind on this issue.
With myself and the fight that I've been in, I mean, I've studied our history extensively, but I've also had to go in and study the law. I'm caught up in a different type of situation because I'm not incarcerated, but I actually had to fight the death penalty. And the way I had to fight it, I had to make allies, I had to make friends, you know, so there was so many different ways I had to flip that coin around and look at it, you know, in order for me to be able to do what I was able to do. And in that, I found good people, you know. When we're going back to Juneteenth and them continuing to keep the slaves, not acknowledging the fact that they were free, that was horrific. It's horrible. But, you know, we have to look at now, we are free. And that's where I try to keep my mind at, because my family is from the South, but I haven't spent a lot of time in the South because I've been fighting this legal system. But I didn't get a chance to really get that Southern feel. You know what I mean? Whereas the rest of my family, they were always down South. You know, they were always able to do things. But myself, I basically had to stay up here in the North and fight this battle. So there's just so much that I can say, but other than recognize the history of. And like I said, I've been celebrating it for so long. And for now, for so many other people to I always thought everybody recognized it. I never thought about it on a national level. You know, it was in my heart. And now that it flashed up and I'm like, wow, somebody really got to these people. There must have really been something going on for these guys to recognize this as a national holiday. So, I mean, I'm elated, you know, and I'm hoping that the rest of our country is elated because of it. Because, you know, I was explaining to a friend of mine, I celebrate all the American holidays. And that's because I'm an American, and this is now an American holiday. And I will continue to celebrate it.
And you, Charles, said that you were the first one to be born off of the family farm or the plantation. And I know
Yes.
Furonda mentioned that she is working currently out of a slave state. Like she's in the South working on criminal justice. And so I would love for you guys to talk about, Charles, I definitely want people to hear how you went to the Confederacy really for the first time or for South Carolina's launch. And Furonda, I definitely want you to talk about working in a slave state, really.
I'm going to let Furonda go first.
Well, thank you. You know, I live and work out of Arkansas, and you know, you hear the news about Arkansas, specifically about the death penalty. You know, when we make news, it's for all of the for the wrong reasons. In fact, in 2017, the state of Arkansas set 8 execution dates to be carried out in a matter of 10 days. The plan was to have 4 double executions starting the day after Easter, the Monday after Easter, because our execution drugs were going to expire. And so, you know, the death penalty here is blatantly racially biased, it's racist. African Americans are over 2 times more likely to receive the death penalty versus their white counterparts. For a capital crime, you got the same class of crime, and the Black person is over 2 times more likely to actually receive the death sentence. And so you know, this is something we've been fighting against for many, many years. But you know, I had a thought today about Juneteenth, and Juneteenth, I want to be clear, something that I celebrate every single year. Just like Charles, you know, this is not something that's new to us. We're not new to this. We are true to this. So federal holiday or not. But the thought that I had today is, you know, we're fighting for all of these reforms, and we're fighting for all of these rights, but what if we are free right now and we're just waiting on somebody to tell us? What if the power is ours to claim, and the freedom is ours to have if we just walk into it? So there is a really good, I feel really good about that, knowing that the power is ours, the power is to the people. And it's up to us to find ways to exercise that power to realize the changes that we want to see.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a huge point that's one of those light bulb moments, right? Like, what if all we have to do is claim it? What if someone just didn't tell us? It's the same idea. On this day, you can really think about the ancestors that had to be told. They've been free for years, and they have been working. The whole catch-up game, the whole shock of it all. But yeah, Charles, I'd love for you to talk about your experience in South Carolina.
I went down my first time, we're going down here, and I was telling my friend, I felt a chill go through me. I says, I'm coming down to South Carolina for the first time in my life, and I'm coming down here to fight death, the death penalty. We helped put the South Carolinians to Alternative to the Death Penalty together, and I got a chance to see some of their displays downtown. A replica of small little replica of the slave ship that came over that had us packed like sardine cans, and all the things on the wall sent chills through me. Again, like I told you, I wasn't really down in the South a lot. So this is my first time seeing this, and sent chills. And now we're down here and everybody's like, we're trying to get rid of the Confederacy state of mind. And I was like, holy smokes, where am I at? Man, you're in the South. You're down here where all this happened. I'm looking at the forest, and I told my friend, I said, oh my God, I should say was running through here, man. And it brought tears to my eyes. I saw all the things that happened to us. I saw it. And I didn't know how to respond. It wasn't like I was down here on tour. I'm running around. I want to see these displays. I went to the State House. I went to the Capitol. I'm out here rallying. I hear the word abolitionist, activist. I says, well, these had to be the same words that was going around during slavery. Because when you look back at slavery, these are the words you hear, activist and abolitionist. I says, oh my God. So when you hear abolish, we're talking about abolish the death penalty. You're actually talking about abolish slavery, or that institution of that mindset. Those are not words that you toss around lightly. Abolish, abolitionist, activist, activism. I mean, those are two very important words to our culture.
And so I don't know how much you guys are aware of what's going on in Ohio, but so Wednesday we had our proponent hearing for SB 103. And it was a great day for criminal justice as far as being heard, right? And I do want to shout out, our team was amazing. We had a wonderful hearing, but also on the agenda was was bail reform, and get this, ending slavery. Ending slavery according to the 13th Amendment in the state of Ohio. It was Senate Joint Resolution number 1 in Ohio, and that was heard, and it's 2021. We are still talking about versions of slavery that are acceptable by society, and so we're dealing with that level of tolerance. And then you walk all the way back to the death penalty. It's like, are people even evolved enough to understand how barbaric these policies are, and like how common sense it is at where we are as a society to not just end the death penalty, but treat humans like human beings? It's so easy to dehumanize the others, whoever the others are, and whoever the others are. And today we're talking about Black others. Black others that came off of plantations, that came here from their freedoms and their homeland, or were kidnapped, here right here, even, because we don't talk about the Black people that were already here that became slaves. So yeah, Juneteenth is very significant to me, but we are in 2021 hearing about ending slavery still. So those words never went away. And what you guys don't know, I'm in Cincinnati. I can walk 2-3 minute walk to the Harriet Beecher Stowe House. So
oh, wow.
Abolitionist is right here in my city, very, very close and near and dear to me. I didn't pose a question, but I talked to Charles about George Stinney and the anniversary of his execution, a 14-year-old baby who had to be sat on a Bible to be executed, and then was 70 years later exonerated. And that's why they launched in South Carolina the alternatives to the death penalty. And so I kind of want you guys to tell me how you see Juneteenth, everything that's in the media regarding race, and the work that we're doing on abolition, the abolishment of the death penalty, how you see it tying in. And either one of you can go.
Well, when I went down to South Carolina, I told them, looking at their streets, there had to be blood everywhere. I mean, I don't think there was a corner that probably didn't have some bloodshed on it. They were talking about when General Sherman brought his troops down through there. Now I'm going back in my mind to the history books, because I remember reading all this stuff and studying all this stuff, but to actually step down in there, to feel those displays, to see that stuff, there was pain. I mean, pain. There was fear. It was frightening to me. Again, like I said, I didn't know how to respond to that because I never saw those displays. Up here in Ohio, I'm fighting the death penalty. I call it the legal system of slavery. And then there's so many different, execution is not new to our culture. They've been executing us in so many different ways. It's unbelievable. But now it's like they've come up with a way that's somewhat acceptable to society to continue to execute us. So what we call barbaric today was even more barbaric back then, But now, especially being a Black male, I'm going to have a different perspective because it was a lot of different things were more apt to happen to the men and than the women, and then there was different things that was happening to the women. You know what I mean? So I'm looking at that, and the thing with George Stinney and so many others. You can't look at the white female. When I was down south, I happened to look over and I froze. I said, "Oh my God, so many guys died for that very same thing." I froze. I said, "This is America." I mean, I wasn't staring. I just happened to look as they went by. But I said, "But back then, that could not happen. I would have probably lost my life at that point." And that was so frightening to me. So again, it's taught me how far we've come, but there's still so much further to go. I should not have to fear where I live.
Absolutely. Charles, you make some really good points that it reminds me of the work that we're doing, the noose to the needle, how, the death penalty has just basically evolved from lynching and racial terror lynching. And that was designed to keep slaves in line, to keep freedmen in line, to keep freedmen from asking for a suitable wage for their work, or to a suitable price for their crop. Lynching, if you got out of your place, then that was what you could possibly expect, is to be, killed in an extrajudicial killing. Many times that was sanctioned by the local government. The sheriff would unlock the jail so that mobs of people could come in and take people out of the jails. Or they would have, when they first introduced the death penalty, they'd have these sham trials where, they take 30 or 40 minutes to convict somebody of a crime so that they could actually legally hang them, or however they chose to execute the person. So what we see now with the modern day death penalty is just an evolution of the terror that's been perpetrated against people of color, Black people primarily in this country. And I think today is a very appropriate day, Juneteenth, to remember the sordid history and the past of this country, to have a truth telling about, how did we get here and why do we even need this particular holiday? Why do we celebrate Juneteenth?
I was telling Jennifer that I am the first in my family to be born off the plantation. My family was sharecroppers. My mother and her sisters and brothers, they came to Ohio in 1958. They had second, third grade education. They held the Bible so tight to them. That was their form of education. They shoved that Bible down our throat so we could almost quote scriptures as children, because that's all they knew as education. And it was very difficult for us to adjust or assimilate in Ohio because there wasn't the big fields to work in, and this is what they were accustomed to. My mother couldn't come down, and they couldn't come down and go to high school. Therefore, they couldn't fill out applications. So we went through a whole generation of adults that were never employed, and which would take us to getting us back into the legal system of slavery. We were number one candidates because they didn't know how to take care of themselves. And as I got older, I started seeing things. I was like, oh my God, and I started explaining slavery's over in 1865. What you guys stick around for? We had nowhere to go. We didn't know where to go. And they stuck around so long that they accepted. It's like they accepted that way of life. I listened to my mother and her sister discuss that back and forth. It's like, we're not related to them. They're the last of that slave piece for us. So to me, they're relics. And I listen to everything they say. I call them weird because so many things that they do are weird, but it has hurt my life and my brothers and sisters and the rest of us because we were born here in Ohio and we picked up that northern, hey, let's get it together, that pop cool, and we went on. We never visited where they lived. In fact, my family comes from Governor Claude Swanson. They were born in Swansonville. They took care of the governor, which my mother didn't know what a governor was. All she knew was that she was on this plantation and she was playing and yada, 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 yada. My mother had me when she was 13 years old. They lived under an adage called breed 'em and feed 'em. And I was like, oh my God. So I see how our family got so messed up. It's taken me a lifetime to try to straighten this out because, again, I have to fight against my mother. Her and I do not see eye to eye because she's coming from that Southern piece and I'm trying to change it. And it's not acceptable. But we have failed dramatically as a family. Most of my family's incarcerated. Her brothers, her sister, everybody's incarcerated because they fell into that legal system by not being educated to go out and apply for a decent job and figure out how to make it in America. You come from the South, you come up here and you commit crimes, so you're perfect for the legal system. And so the vast majority of my family has been incarcerated because of that, not because they were bad people, not because they were criminals, it's because they didn't know any other way to survive. And that has been one of the stories of our family. We have not learned to live, but we were still surviving. And that takes us back to that slavery, that Juneteenth. I am so touched and so in place with that. Being the firstborn, the first to graduate, reading and writing and so on and so forth. I'm like, in fact, they call me the white sheep of the family. And I was like, oh my God, you guys are so far behind. And you can see how it has affected the grandchildren and everyone else because my mother is the powerhouse in our family. And she's still teaching the Southern way. And we're losing up here in the North.
And I think that leads into what Furonda definitely wanted to cover, which is critical race theory. But look at my shirt, y'all.
Free-ish.
Right.
It's free. We're free-ish. Like we're not. Yeah, you told me that's what they had down in South Carolina. Yeah, like
right.
If there's a level, there's a complacency that we have found ourselves in. A lot of folks feel free enough until they find themselves at the edge of the envelope, right? When they find themselves boxed in and they're like, oh, I'm not free. And then they get activated very often, or they get discouraged. It's one or the other. And I was one of the ones that was activated. I realized, oh, I'm not free. This is not free. This is not what freedom is. I don't know if you guys have ever heard Assata Shakur speak. She said she has no idea what freedom is. She has no idea. And I think when I first heard it, I didn't understand. I'm like, what you mean you don't know what freedom is? You free. Like, you on the run, but you free. No. And I fully understand it now that there is a way to seem free, right? Like slaves used to have passes. They used to be able to walk around. They had to go back home though, when they were supposed to be home. And so there is a level of complacency that I feel. But I think everything that you just said, Charles, leads into the critical race theory. I know I brought that up a few times, but it's in the news right now. And that's what people seem to be afraid of. And I don't know how we can have Juneteenth and acknowledge what that is, and then say that this nation was not built on white supremacy. It wasn't built on bias, racism, and otherness. So Black folks are on the other end of that, where we are others, and we end up getting the short end of the stick, even when we are in our same classes, right? So if I'm wealthy and you're wealthy, I'm still Black. You know, if I'm educated and you're educated, I'm still Black. And it always shows. And then there's this one place where it shows up, regardless of your credentials, which is when you are driving down the street or when you're in the public and you don't get to show your degree and show your accomplishments. You just are your complexion. And so, Furonda, did you want to speak to your opinion on critical race theory?
Well, knowledge is power. And anytime you can enslave the minds of a people, you can unlock the door, and the people will not walk out, And so, how did we get here and the truth about how we got here is liberating. And they know that, these lawmakers that are passing these laws, so that we cannot talk about critical race theory and we cannot talk about the racist history of this country and how this country has raped, killed, pillaged whoever and whenever it was convenient. To not tell that truth, it makes the plight of Black people, the current plight of Black people, the current plight of people of color, it seems to make it our own fault. Like we haven't pulled ourselves up by our bootstraps good enough. We don't work hard enough. We're not smart enough, and that's not the case. We are dealing with systemic racism, and that's what critical race theory, the crux of it is to show that systemically, not just it was somebody that was prejudiced over here or somebody that was racist and didn't like Black people over here. No, the systems, the very systems in which we have to live and breathe and abide by, they were created and rooted in white supremacy and racism. And that's what we're working with today. And until we tell the truth about that, until we're clear about that, until all of our children know about that, all of our adults know that it ain't just you, boo. It's the system that you're working with, that you're trying to work within, that is inherently racist and has to be. We've been trying for years to reform these systems. We've got to abolish these antiquated systems that uphold white supremacy in our country, and that's what critical race theory is. That's why people are fighting so hard against teaching it, because the truth will set us free.
And to that, it's just really interesting that they say racism doesn't exist until we say that white supremacy, white supremacy is a problem, and then they feel attacked. And that's why I love the work that I do, because the white people that I work with, more often than not, are deliberate in trying to address the inherent biases that they possess, that this nation taught them to have. And they are deliberate in it. And so I think that, and I've seen, it's rare. I've worked a lot of places. I wish I could see my resume. I worked a lot of places, and that's the first time that I've really seen people actually work to improve themselves in this way. Because while it does benefit them on some metaphysical level, it may or may not benefit them in the way that we're taught to benefit ourselves, right? Like we're taught to go pursue materialistic gains. And doing that kind of work is really more of it's a metaphysical game, and I appreciate the folks that I work with. But yeah, I'm confused. I've been confused by the conversation. First of all, it's not a new theory. It's been around for a while. 40, almost 50, maybe 50 years. It's been documented, and the evidence is there. I like to cite the book "The Sum of Us" by Heather McGhee. Everyone should read it. I know this is not the platform to plug businesses, but everyone should read that book. It talks about how racism is insidious and no one is protected. If you think that you're just othering people and only those others will be affected by racism, sorry to tell you, it will affect you as well. And so what I learned reading the book is that whenever there were racist policies in place, white people, especially poor white people, were directly affected negatively by those policies. And then we look at the criminal justice system. We look at the death penalty. We look at poor counties. We look at, the lack of representation going, to defend yourself against a capital case. We look at, Furonda, you know this as an attorney. A competent attorney is one that's not asleep, that's not drunk. That's the level of competency you're guaranteed in representation, and that's what Charles and I talked about. So like it's like the poor whites are negatively impacted by racist policies that were only supposed to hurt us. And so
Can I?
go for it, Charles. Go for
I
it.
want to say something on that one. It was funny because I was jokingly telling a friend of mine, I said, it's funny when they freed the slaves in the South, they actually freed the poor whites from their caste positions, and everyone else is from their caste position. So when I was down South Carolina, I was looking around and I said, well, heck, slavery freed the South. They were all enslaved. I'm looking at the faces. I'm looking at them. I didn't look like anyone was missing it. You know, I'm in restaurants. I mean, I got my feelings on how I felt. But when I was looking around, I says, yeah, the South definitely did not need slavery. You know, I think they were afraid of economically, they were going to, you know, go become poor like the other poor whites that were there. We're going to lose our money. We're going to lose our everything. They really didn't. The South is beautiful. I saw it. They learned another way of life. The word that I always had problem with was freedom. And I kept saying that one day, freedom, free and dumb. That's who I was. Wasn't I was free dumb. They set us free and didn't teach us anything. See ya. And we left. Dumb in a box of rocks. I says, oh my God. And you know, and I had to gravitate to the American education. I had to gravitate to that because I said, if I don't, man, I'm gonna sink. This is America. And once I got that education, it got that dumb off the last word of freedom, and it left me free. And that meant so much to me because I wasn't seeking freedom. I was seeking to be free from everything that held and bound me. And so I had to get rid of that last word, dumb.
And so I love free as the root word, and I use ish. That's my suffix. And you're just free, but I have free-ish, you know, because I feel like I'm a mother. I have a 3-year-old Black boy. And so anyone who's ever listened to me speak has heard me say the reason I got into this work is because I realized that my son's going to inherit this world, and I don't feel comfortable leaving it the way it is. And so, yeah, I'm actually, my ish is wrapped up in my child. So,
you know, I also had to make sure, and I always tell myself, you know, no matter how educated I become, or if powerful, never become like that of my oppressor. If I'm asking for equality, then that is what I have to seek. I can't seek to overstep him because it's going to make me just like him. So I'm not seeking a war. I'm seeking love and peace. I don't want to be over anyone. I don't want anyone to be over me. The Bible says God created us all equal. And that's all I was looking for, equality. And, you know, and I know the slaves didn't understand that. And, you know, there were so many things that they didn't understand. Again, you're looking at a dumb set of people. It wasn't even a culture. You know, these were captives. They didn't create that. You know, they were captives. So I had to learn from all the things that happened to them, all the hand-me-down things, all the mistakes they made, all the bad decisions they made. I listened to my mother and all those negative and terrible hand-me-down things that she was handing to us. I said, wow, doesn't work. When they couldn't even find birth certificates from my mother's family. There were none. There were no birth certificates. They had to make them up. That's why they couldn't find them in the system. It was almost like they never existed. And she used to tell me how they used to run around on the plantation. They would see a body hanging from the tree and, you know, they would scream. And, you know, they always told you about the boogeyman. And we never knew with that stuff, man. Now I do. So, you know, she really brought the South home to us. And she still lives that way now. In fact, you can't even pay my mother to watch Roots. Won't do it. She says, I lived it. And I'm like, wow, Mom, you know, there's not too many people I know that pushed the plow and did all the stuff that you guys did. She's sitting here talking about crab cakes and, you know, you hear the slaves running around saying all these things. She said, I ate all that stuff. I did all that stuff. And her grandmother, because her mother died, so her grandmother took care of her, which pushed her even farther back in her learning, you know? So I was like, wow. And again, as I look at our family, we have not done. We've gone backwards, and not in a learning piece of history, but in our teaching from my mother, who was taught from her grandmother, that they really didn't teach them any. You understand what I'm saying? Because I told her it's time for jobs, employment, and things to come into our family. But you have to know how to fill out an application. You have to know how to sit down and interview. They're not going to do it because they have a fear of talking to somebody white because they think they're going to be judged as being stupid. They can't fill out the application. So how do you go in and ask for a job when that's not appropriate? Down south, they were able to go out and ask for a job. But when you come up north, and as time continued on, there wasn't an asking, there was, you got to fill out an application. And that's where they failed at. My mother says, hey, I'm 14 years old. They tried to put her in the ninth grade. She couldn't do it. She's 14-year-old, pregnant, in ninth grade, couldn't go. Nobody went to school when they came up north. And we paid dearly for that. And education in our family, it's not looked upon highly because people don't want nobody to know that they think the word is stupid, but it's not. It's just, you're not educated. It's uneducated. It's not stupid. It's not dumb. It's uneducated, which means you can still be educated if you open up your mind to receive some of this stuff. And I told people, if I hate America, I'm not going to survive here. I'm not going to excel. I'm not going to succeed, because you cannot succeed in a place that you hate. If you hate a house, you're going to move. If you're in a relationship that you hate, you're going to get up out of it. So if I hate America, I'm not going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to embrace the land, and I have to tolerate the people, the laws, and I change what I can. And believe me, I've been out there fighting for 30 years. But what surprised me is I don't see a whole lot of people that look like me out there fighting with me.
Well, you started a conversation just then. You just started like another conversation, which I really do want to talk about. But before I do, I want to say something to your equality piece, which I don't remember who the poet was. I think it was Langston Hughes, but I've never been able to find the poem. But he basically said, America should be happy that we're only looking for equality and not revenge. Like, and that's what most Black people want. Like, people are taken away when you get on social media and you see these criticisms about Juneteenth. It's like, give us a look, give us some room now. Like, we just want to celebrate some happy moments. We just want to be happy. Y'all still shooting us in the street. You still owe our ancestors a lot. Like, there's still damage and harm here. There's still genetic trauma coded into every one of our babies and every one of us. Like,
Yes.
It still work, right? But can we celebrate something? We just want to have our moment as Americans, like any other American would. But whenever we get a moment, it seems like we're robbed of the joy of it. And it's not just from others, it's often from us. And that goes back into the conversation you just started, Charles, which, in the front, I want to hear your feedback on this. Working in this work, in the activism that disproportionately affects Black people in the criminal justice environment, right? In Ohio, 56% of the death row inmates are Black. We make up 50% of the population. And so people like to think that means that Black folks are problematic. You guys are doing a crime, when really the issue is you can go anywhere and find criminals. Where are you policing? Where are you sending the police? And who are the police targeting? And so you're going to fill our prisons with Black bodies in a state that still believes in slavery, 13th Amendment. And then you're going to throw us into onto the death row. And then we have 72% of our exonerees from death row are Black. Like, so those are innocent people completely absolved of all crimes. So that's a problem. And so you think, if with those numbers, with these Black families being affected, and I know that when you remove someone from a family, it causes a financial disparity as well. But with that number of Black people being affected, you would think you would see more Black faces in this movement and in this work. And that's not the case. Furonda actually has to lead a whole caucus of Black leaders in doing this work nationally because there's so few of us. So Furonda, I want you to speak to that.
So, we typically, when there's something adverse or something that is negative or not good happening, it disproportionately affects Black people. It disproportionately affects people of color. And the death penalty is certainly no different than that. And that's one of the reasons that we have to abolish it. I mean, there's a whole long list, but we have to, in abolishing the death penalty, we also have to educate. We've got to educate our communities of color about the racial disparity in it, about the racist history of it, because it is so easy for us sometimes to take a case or a scenario and rightly so, be very, very upset about, you know, the crimes that have been perpetrated against us. But if we buy into this racist practice for one isolated incident or one case when they decide that they want to impose it upon someone other than a person of color, you know, we support that. We're supporting systemic racism, and so we're trying to get more African Americans and people of color to engage in this work, to engage their spheres of influence, their local churches, their friends, their family, all of that, so that we can dispel the myths about the death penalty and move forward to abolish it together.
Charles, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yes. You know, in the 60s, we fought for our rights. We fought for our civil rights. You know, we were led by Martin Luther King. There was a lot of events happening during that time frame. We as a culture has never been able to abolish anything. So I thought that word would have everybody running. Abolish. Abolish? Man, that should have been one of the easiest things for us to do, especially something that's going to adversely affect us. So it should have been an overwhelming amount of people out there, man, we're going to abolish this. I didn't see them. I've also heard someone say, should he probably need it? He probably should get it. And I had to do a double take on them. Whoa, are you serious? And then something hit me a long time. It hit me. I was like, wait a minute, we were divided during slavery. See, there were two types of slaves. And we can't forget that. When we talk about slavery, the institution of slavery, we're still not looking at the mental mindset that they split us again, give us two types. And that was the field and the house. And we have to watch today for the field and the house mentality, meaning us against us. What's wrong with you? How can you not show up to save our lives? How can you not be there? They're always talking about the strong Black woman. My hats are off to you guys. It really is. But I never hear that word. They're talking about the strong Black man. I don't hear it. And there's something wrong with that.
That is, I'm pausing, I'm sorry, because that's actually huge. And that's another hour worth of conversation at least. Looking for that's a big topic because and this is something I think we probably have all discussed at some point or another, but they say often that, you know, fathers, you know, baby and love their daughters and raise their sons, and mothers baby and love their sons and raise their daughters, because you're teaching that person the role that you share with them, right? But we also know that there is a disproportionate amount of broken homes in the Black community. I'm not saying absent fathers. There are very present fathers that just live in a different house, right? Or very present mothers that live in a different house, however the family dynamic works out. And then there are blended families and all that stuff. And so what we see is a lot of women are teaching their daughters to be strong, and they're with their daughters full time. And these women grow up and they are strong women, but they're also babying their sons. I have a son. I'm so grateful that his father is in the house. I baby my boy, and I can imagine that that's what most women do. And then when you turn on the news and Tamir Rice, a baby boy, is murdered by the police playing in the park, what can you do but cherish the moments you have with your child because of the fear and the trauma? It's literally the same thing of seeing strange fruit hanging from trees, right? You are terrified of the next thing that could impact your life, and so you hang on to what's dearest to you to a point of fault. And so I'm happy there's something to balance my crazy out, because I love my son to a fault, honestly. And but his father is there to help him grow up and be a man. And it's just, you did touch on something that is very deep, and it definitely goes back to the roots of being in this nation that I don't think came from where we came from. I think that is something that we learned here, that we were taught here through trauma and abuse. And again, so we are celebrating being free-ish. I'm gonna keep saying free-ish because we still have all these shackles on our minds and in our culture. And then those of us who evolve, who get free, in their heads still have to interact with folks who are not free. And it can be exhausting. I know y'all know because y'all do activism. I know, I know I'm an organizer. And so you're interacting with people who need to be educated, don't want to be educated, like things the way they are, don't know what impacts them. And it is exhausting. And so I don't know, we have 10 minutes. Did you guys want to touch on that?
It's exhausting, especially as a male. I'm a man. I'm trying to talk to other men. I'm arguing. I'm like, how are you arguing with me? You have no awareness. You have nothing going on. You guys laugh because you go out here and you'll find a female and you'll mess her life up and you'll call her my baby mama. How is that funny? How is that funny? I'm talking to men now. We have our little men talk and stuff like that. And I told him I see very powerful men all the time. But I see educated men, but I don't see powerful. It's like our powerful men has not emerged since the 60s. Where's our power? Where's those deep male voices? Where are they? You can't tell me they're all pastors and the only time you're going to see them is in church. Where are you guys at? I've been out here a long. Charles, aren't you afraid of dying? I'm going to die. God has already put that on me. He just never told me how I was going to die. So what is there to fear? And then I tell him, you'll step to me, but you won't speak up.
Furonda, what were you going to say?
For me, the exhaustion is fighting inequity. We live in a democratic system, and we have been sold this American dream where everyone is equal and you can have whatever you want if you work hard, and that's just simply not true. Our country is just rooted and founded in inequity and discrimination and racism. And until we have a reckoning, until we are able to erase those fundamental values, however atrocious that they are, until we're able to erase those from our systems, we're gonna be exhausted. We're gonna be tired because we are essentially beating our heads up against a brick wall. We are fighting in a system that was never meant to treat us fairly. It was never reformed to have equity. And what we see instead is that whenever we make progress, they move the ball. Whenever we mobilize folks and get them out to vote, then they change the rules, and so that's the part that's exhausting for me. The fact that, we are working hard to change these inequitable systems, but it's so ingrained in the heritage of our country. And so that's why Juneteenth is such a amazing time of remembrance, a time for us to realize that we are free, that we have the power. When we watch, I don't know anybody that hasn't watched a slave movie and said, well, why don't they just all rise up? Why don't they just all, it's so many more of them than it is, the master and the overseer. Why don't they just, rise up? And so I think this is a great time for us to remember that we are free. And if we want to see change in our world, then we have got to be that change, and we got to demand that change.
So I don't know if you guys have any specific examples that you guys want to share, like of dealing with this type of exhaustion. But I know I have had to repeat myself to people who didn't hear me, no matter how many times I had to repeat myself until a white person said it. And that has been very frustrating for me, because I don't usually speak on things I don't know. And if I don't know, I will tell you, like, I'm not sure, but this is what I believe. I don't start things confidently that I'm not sure about, and they'll take somebody that's second guessing themselves word over mine just because they match the complexion they're comfortable with. And this is not necessarily a white person doing this. This is often a Black person who will look at me and say, no, you're not, your credibility isn't there because your hair is natural or because your complexion. I'm going to ask this guy. And I'm like, oh, you mean my intern? Like, you mean this guy, this 21-year-old? So that's an example that I have that I've run into. I don't know if you guys had any that you can immediately touch on.
Yes, I want to touch on the Willie Lynch syndrome. I read that, and I worked in a mental health facility, and I says, well, syndromes, doesn't that tap into your mental health? And I says, well, wouldn't all Black people basically be affected by that Willie Lynch syndrome? I says, well, if that's the case, could that possibly be a way of getting reparations? PTSD, the Willie Lynch syndrome. Because I didn't call it the syndrome, it was called that. And if we come through that condition, how can we not be affected by that?
And you cut out, say that last part one more time. If we come through that condition.
I said, if we've come through that condition, how can we not be affected by that mentally?
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe that's what's wrong with, we're out here trying to figure it out. When I looked at that, I said, that's a powerful piece of information right there, how to create a slave. And then you're talking about the Willie Lynch syndrome. So everything that was done to us, we're talking mental. And then we get out here, we're still mental. Some of us don't know how to make it. Maybe that is our way of getting a reparations. Get yourself together, and you may have to go out there and apply for PTSD or the Willie Lynch syndrome and start getting some money so that you don't have to be a bum in the street. Get some money, get a check, get yourself together, because these are some of the mental health things that have happened to you. It ain't just today's mental health. This has been happening to us since 1619, and you can't say it hasn't affected us mentally.
I like that strategy. Attorney Brasfield, how well can we do with that strategy? I'm kidding, but no free legal advice here, no free legal advice.
I just want to echo some of the things that you guys said. White supremacy is ingrained upon not only the fabric of our country and the heritage of our country, it is ingrained in the minds of all of the citizens. We know how it works. Black people know how it works. White people know how it works. Sometimes we are unwilling to admit that this is this caste system is ingrained into the systems of our country. But that's another reason why it's important to have remembrances, to have meaningful remembrances, and then to back those remembrances up with policy that will change the sordid history of our country.
And so I do have two things that I want to ask both of you, and I'm going to start with Furonda first, and I want you both to answer this question. You both said that you celebrate Juneteenth every year, and you are doing the same thing that you always do. So I want to know what you're doing today, or what you've done, and then I want you to tell me what you're actively working on that's important to you, however many projects that is, or however many resources that is, and I will make sure to share those in the posts on social media so people can get to them.
So what have I done today? This morning, I spoke at a real estate awareness home buying workshop. I'm here with you now to discuss Juneteenth, and I'm about to go out on Wright Avenue and shop Black. So I'm gonna go out in the street with the vendors and just mingle with the people and spend my money today with Black vendors. We continue to remember what has happened and try to be a change and make change for the future. The projects that I'm working on, one of them is From Noose to Needle, which is a project of the 8th Amendment Project, and we are working to educate on the racist history of the death penalty and paint that picture for folks of how our modern day death penalty is just lynching evolved and how it is still racist and it still disproportionately affects people of color and primarily African Americans. Also working to help state campaigns. Jennifer, you are doing amazing work in Ohio with stopping executions in Ohio and trying to pass the bills through the legislature, and trying to be an asset to other state organizations that are working for repeal, that are working to fight all of this onslaught of horrible execution laws that we've seen in South Carolina. We've seen they now have firing squad and electric chair as options. In Arizona, they are bringing forth Nazi gas to execute people. So we're just seeing all types of horrendous ideas on how to make a failed system like the death penalty work, and just working every day to try to combat that as well.
And I appreciate everything you do, and your support has been invaluable. So thank you. Thank you for being Furonda.
Thank you.
Charles, how about you? What are you going to do for Juneteenth, or what have you done? What else? What do you want?
Again, we have that special family, as I had mentioned. So I'm teaching the children the history of our culture. Literally like class, sit here, pay attention to this. This may be your only opportunity to get a bird's eye view. Ask any question you want to ask, whatever. It's so informal, but this is us. This is where we come from. You can laugh and giggle, but this is it. And I'm talking to the little bitty children on up, because I had to educate from the smallest almost to the oldest to get these, like I said, one of the problems in our family is not the point of knowing, it's understanding. You have to understand things. I'm working with Death Penalty Action. I'm the impacted community liaison person. And what that means is people that are dealing with the death penalty and wrongful conviction, they have no one to turn to. Attorneys are busy, so they can't sit there and go crazy with you. So I help bring your brain, your mindset back from hell, back up to reality, to where you can think again. Because when you're by yourself and nobody's listening to you and nothing else, that's where you're at. You're in hell, limbo, whatever you want to call it. It's almost like what's ever happening to your loved one is actually happening to you. We've gone down in South Carolina. I've taken my experience down there. I've talked to a lot of people that were not very familiar with the thought process of the death penalty. Oh my God, what if it happens? Now that they've given this guy a stay of execution, not only is it affecting that guy that's on death row, it's affecting the whole state. What is a stay? So now they're learning what a stay is. And they're looking at all the other components and dynamics of the death penalty, and none of it is looking appealing. Here's an electric chair. When you brought up that electric chair and even mentioned it, it brought out George Stanley Jr. That's all you could see was George, And I told him in my fight and things with the death penalty, I did not just see Black, I didn't see white, I saw poor. Because there is no wealthy on the death row. They don't get it. There's no wealthy people that get executed. They're not going to commit poor crimes. So you get the death penalty if you commit a poor crime. And that's why it's comprised of Blacks and whites. And again, as with slavery, you had your poor whites and, freeing the slaves, freed the poor whites. So if we end the death penalty, it's going to get the innocent, exonerated Black guys out of there, but it's also going to free the poor whites. A lot of times what happens to us, it happens to them, and they don't understand why. And I laugh, but because you're poor.
Mm-hmm. And Kevin, you want to talk about your brother's website too?
Yes. My brother, justice for KevinKeith.org. We're waiting for a decision from the courts to find out if Kevin's going to get a new trial or be exonerated. I've been working on that for about 30 years. So we're in a good space right here. He got past that execution thing. He went within 13 days. So my hats are off to Governor Strickland. A lot of people have bad things to say about him. I cannot. For what he done for me, I cannot say anything bad about him. I'm not in that position. And I also have a program that I'm putting together. It's called My Daddy Program, where they were talking about school to prison. I've been working on that thing for so many years. It's called Dedicated Adult Developing Disadvantaged Youth. And that is taking kids from 18 to 30 and teaching them a job skill, supporting them if they go to college. We're not going to leave you out there alone. If you have people or family that are not supportive to you, it doesn't matter. This program is going to help you be there. We're not only just a wraparound, we're going to make sure you get it done, because Charles Keith has a saying, and I want people to know what that is, and failure is not an option.
I love it. So, Furonda, I believe I have everything related to your programs. Please send me any links that I need, and same for you, Charles. If you just send me the links, I want to be able to share them with our viewers. I am really, really grateful and honored that you were able to spend this historic day with me for an hour. Like, it's an hour of our day. And it was powerful. And we'll be able to share it far and wide. And I think the conversation needed to happen. I'm grateful. Anything else?
For me to share the platform with attorneys, prominent people, because, I don't look like what I've been through, but it shows me the progress that I've made. I'm honored, talking to Furonda, knowing her, knowing people like her, knowing that you strong women, my hat's off to you. God bless you, and keep on doing what you're doing. Us men, at some point, we're going to catch up.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, you guys have a good rest of your day, and find me something good when you get to Wright Street, Furonda.
I will. I'll let you know.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.